Testing. Working with a new camera here today, giving this a go. Hopefully everything works out. Hi everybody, welcome back to Reissued. If you're new here, my name is Andrew. We are approaching the end of 2023, and I thought it would be fun to do a sort of 2023 year in review here on my channel. I've seen other YouTubers do this before, and I've always wanted to do a video like this. However, I've never really been regular enough about my upload schedule to have enough content at the end of the year to be able to do that. But this year, I worked really hard. There were so many projects, so many videos, and so we have a lot to talk about today. This is just a fun opportunity to revisit some of my favorite projects, to talk about some of my biggest fails of the year, to give kind of a behind the scenes look at various aspects of projects that I couldn't really discuss in the video, to show you some changes that I've made in some of the spaces, and also to talk about things that I've learned this year. I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump on in. Alright, so we started off the year with a lot of renovation projects. So many of these projects had been started in 2021, 2022, and I just been sort of holding on to them and waiting for them to be done enough to show you. These days, I'm taking you along with me a little bit more during the entire process, but at that time, I really wanted everything to be done before I showed you, right? So one of the coolest projects of the year right at the start was the hidden storage in my bathroom, that little pull-out. That has continued to be super useful in my space, and that's one of those projects. There are some things that are just about like getting it done, and there are other things that are just such a great idea. And using a thrifted kitchen cabinet to make that happen makes it feel a little bit more approachable, a little bit more DIY. Love that project. As I mentioned in that video, my only regret on that project, I did paint one side of the plywood first, and it caused it to just bend and warp slightly. That still is a bit of an issue. It doesn't sit completely flat in the wall. It kind of like bulges a little bit. If I had it to do over again, I would go ahead and paint both sides at the same time so that it wouldn't like bend toward where it was painted. But all in all, great project, one of the best of the year, I think. As we go along here, if you had a favorite project, favorite video this year, go ahead and drop that down in the comments. I'm curious to hear what you guys really enjoyed. Moving on to hand-painted wallpaper. This was something that started in like September of last year, and it carried through over months. I mentioned in that video, there was so much time that went into that project, but it was also kind of a procrastination game because it was just hard to wrap my head around getting that much of the wall covered and how much work it actually was. I went in thinking it was not going to be that bad because that's how I start every project, thinking, oh, it's going to be so easy. But then when I got into it, it was just like a lot of time. I find that with like artwork and DIY in my house, it kind of goes one of two ways where, you know, when you're in the process, of course, you're seeing every single mistake that's being made. And over time, either the mistakes continue to bug you and get progressively worse, or time works its magic and you sort of like can back up from it a little bit and like see it for what it really is. And for the hand-painted wallpaper, when I finished that video, I just felt like I wasn't done. I needed more time. I needed to perfect things more. I was seeing every little imperfection. But over time, as that's been up on the wall, I've just been able to step back and let it be and see it for what it really is. And I really enjoy it. I think it's really beautiful. One thing I am thinking about with this, I opted to go with the flat paint in that space, partly because that's what I already had on hand on the atrium, partly because we did our own drywall job in there and flat paint is very forgiving for that sort of thing, and partly when I was hand painting the details in, I thought it would be better to work with the flat paint so that when you have any sort of sheen in a paint, it seems like the more that you build it up, the shinier it is. And so for hand painting details, it's like every little variation in terms of the thickness of the paint would show up in the sheen as well. And so I thought a flat paint would be a really good way to just get something that looks a lot more even. However, as I see that up on the wall now, it just looks really flat. Not all that surprising because it is a flat paint, but I'm wondering what that would look like with a little bit more sheen. One of the things that I really like about wallpaper in a space is the kind of like soft and subtle like sheen that a paper can give on the wall, just that kind of textural element as well as the pattern. And so I've been wondering what would happen if we went over the top with like a glaze. Obviously something that's super transparent, but something that might have a little bit of sheen and maybe even a warm ambery color to it. If you've seen any of my art videos this year, I've gotten in the habit of kind of washing everything with a burnt umber acrylic just to give it kind of an aged, more warm tone brown kind of look. And I think that that room could stand to have a little bit more warmth. And so I do wonder about glazing those walls. It feels a little bit scary because there's so much time that went into that and I don't want to mess it up, but I might do a little test and see if I can come up with something that might take that to the next level. Obviously that steps down the road. I have so many other things to do, but that is on my mind. Let me know what you think. With the guest bathroom makeover in general, that has been such a gift to have in my life, to have a bathroom that is beautiful and functional and that feels like me. When I moved into the house, I had my refrigerator and my microwave in my entry, and I was working out of the old bathroom, which was kind of gross. And so it was really nice having a kitchen and a bathroom this year to be done. So I've been loving the bathroom. There are a couple things there that I haven't discussed with you guys. First of all, in the after footage, you may have noticed that there was no toilet paper holder mounted anywhere. We did tile the lower half of the walls, so if you're gonna put up one of those wall mounted ones, that's a big commitment because you're drilling into tile. And so I opted to get this little freestanding one at Goodwill. It was $5. I finally spray painted it just yesterday to a dark oil rub bronze kind of color. It's perfect in that space, and I actually really like the freestanding toilet paper holder as opposed to the wall mounted. Let me know what you think about that. Does anyone have a freestanding one out there? Do we like it? The other major thing that happened this year that I didn't discuss on my channel, so when I moved into the house, the skylights leaked. I bought the house as is, wasn't sure what the situation was gonna be. The skylights are beautiful, I love them. And they didn't always leak, a little light rain, no problem, all good. However, that first summer in the house, we get these torrential downpours here in Georgia, and in the bathroom space and in the atrium space, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and hearing rain coming down and just going into the bathroom and seeing water dripping down the walls. It was just so stressful and frustrating. And so we knew the skylights needed to be replaced, but we were kind of putting that off. And so at the time the bathroom reveal video came out, there was plastic up over the skylights to just try to keep the water out. Obviously, I didn't want water to pour down the walls that I had just hand painted. Over the summer, I did get the skylights replaced, which was a big to-do. I had someone quote, and they gave me a really fantastic quote. They came out, they went to install the skylights, and the roof was so weirdly and poorly constructed. They had to come up with this whole new system of how to install the skylights, but they got it done and it looks fantastic. Shout out to Hero Roofing for making that happen for me. They did a fantastic job and they stuck to their original quote, which was maybe not the most ideal thing for them, but it was good for me. But yeah, the new skylights look fantastic. We did some filling to kind of fill in some of the new cracks that are there. They still need to get sanded down and painted to be done, but no leaks anymore, so that's fantastic. Another little change that's happened in the space over time, when I did the reveal for that video, I had really pretty bath products in the shower, and I have since used all those up, and so I'm working through some older products that are unattractive, and they're just sitting there through the beautiful glass door, looking all average. I'm not sure I'm committed enough to aesthetics to be one of those people that buys a soap dispenser container so you can put your shampoo and everything in and make it all match. However, it does bug me. So am I that person? What do you think? And finally, in that video, we built the built-in washer dryer cabinet. Love how that looks. I was unsettled at the time about seeing the front of the washer dryer. We had looked at a lot of ways to put doors on it. I asked you guys in the comments. I've had hundreds of comments giving me suggestions about rolling doors, folding doors, curtains, shades, lots of different things. I appreciate your feedback on that so much. Ultimately, how I feel about it right now, it doesn't really bother me anymore. It's weird. I don't know if anyone's felt this way, but something about this year, I feel like we have tipped over into the late 90s and the early 2000s feeling vintage. That washer dryer is circa 2005. And something about it, it actually is crossing the line into where it looks kind of cool because it's old and vintagey. Similarly, when I watch those kind of 90s movies, like You've Got Mail or something, and see the interiors in those spaces, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool and vintagey now. It feels so homey and I don't know, warm. And so that's kind of an interesting question. Right after a period happens, you look back on that and think wow, that looks so dated. But then you step back far enough and then you're oh, it kind of crosses a line into feeling it's cool again because it feels kind of vintage and old, right? So yeah, with the washer and dryer, it has kind of a mix of white and cream that goes with my space. I'm totally okay with how it looks now. Or maybe I just don't want to take on one more project. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. Another big project this year was finishing up the half bath renovation right here behind me. It's so funny, when we changed up the layout here and closed off the other door into that bathroom, it really makes sense for the function of the house, and I think it's gonna be a really nice change. However, it's a little bit weird because I literally never go into that room anymore. If I'm in this area of the house and I need to use a restroom, I usually just jump right over to the guest bathroom. I don't know, it makes me a little sad that I'm not going into that space that frequently. I still think that space is really beautiful. I've thought about some changes that I would have made to it if I have regrets, if I would do anything differently, and ultimately I stand by all the decisions. I think they're working. I have some additional artwork and some accessories that I think might kind of fill out that space a little bit more. It has a little bit of that kind of witchy, celestial kind of vibe, and I think we can go in that direction more and add more. But yeah, for now, I don't go in there anyway, so it's just chilling there. Moving on to the big one, which was the kitchen makeover video. Drop a line in the comments if you found me from that video. That was my first big like viral video ever. Partly because the renovation was such a massive transformation, and partly because I talked about trends in that video, and people on YouTube love to talk about trends. They love to watch people talk about trends. Do you want to see me talk about trends more? I'm kind of anti-trend in general, but sometimes it's fun to hate on trends. I don't know. It's sometimes tricky creating videos here on YouTube because you pour so much time into something and then it could just like bomb. No one watches it. We'll talk about that later. And with the kitchen video, there was so much time and so much work that my parents and I put into this space that I was thinking like literally for months as that process was going on, what's gonna be the angle of the video? What's the story that we're trying to tell? Are we talking about budget? Are we talking about materials? What's the thing that's gonna get people excited about my kitchen? And when I had the idea for that video, again, I had seen the video that I was sort of responding to. If you want more details on that, go watch that video. But when I saw that video and was thinking about my kitchen, I immediately, it was like late at night, and I like wrote down this long script of all the things I was gonna talk about in a video, and I was gonna do a dedicated video. And I find that creatively, sometimes I have ideas at night and then I wake up the next day and I'm like, ooh, like Andrew, what were you thinking? Like, no one wants to watch that video. And so I kind of like hopped out a bit and did not make it its own video, but incorporating that into the kitchen video was really interesting because I felt like there were a lot of people that were wanting to hear that from someone. It's really frustrating to be putting a lot of time and energy and money into renovating our spaces and then feel like every magazine and every YouTuber is like, that's out, that trend is over. And it's like, well, wait, you told me that that was the thing I needed to do, right? And so when I shot that part of the video, I was really excited to talk about that and really excited to share that because I felt that so many of us were feeling that way. However, there were a lot of comments there that are like, Andrew, don't second guess your choices, your kitchen looks great. And just so you know, like that didn't come from a place of me feeling insecure about my kitchen or like, wow, the trends have changed and now I'm questioning everything. Like genuinely, I was just curious. Like I wanted to start that conversation with you guys, but ultimately I feel great about how my kitchen looks. I definitely have made some choices that feel very specific to that 2021 or even further back, like 2018, 2019, those kind of trends. However, those trends are pretty classic overall. And they're things that I like. Like I like a bluey, greeny, gray. Like I will continue to like that. And it's so funny, one of the shorts that I did this year opening up like Oops paint that I got at Lowe's, one of the colors was kind of a bluey gray color. And there were several comments that were like, gray is out, don't use the gray. And I just think it's funny because at the same time that people are like, don't listen to trends, anything is possible, they're like, gray is out. And I'm like, if you love gray, own your gray, right? And just as a little tip here, I've been pairing my grays with a lot of really warm toned leathers and woods, and I feel like that keeps it away from that like rustic distressed wood with gray look that feels really kind of out now, right? But yeah, I'm very happy with the way that my kitchen turned out. The only thing that I'm not sure about is the range hood, and I have two thoughts on this. Firstly, it's been interesting as my channel has grown this year to be getting a lot of comments, and with a lot of comments comes some negative comments, and I noticed multiple people commenting on the range hood in the kitchen video about it feeling kind of heavy or disproportionate. And generally when comments come up that I don't agree with, like gray is out, I can just like brush that off and it's like, whatever, like you're wrong, dude, not a big deal. However, I find that the comments that kind of like sit with me and disturb me are the ones that I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. So I've been thinking a lot about the range hood in my space, about the proportions of it, about changes that could be made. Ultimately what I've decided, I hung a wreath on there for Christmas and I think it looks fantastic. And so I'm thinking I might hang some sort of picture or something up there just to kind of break up that texture a little bit and help the proportions feel a little bit more balanced. It is so tall and skinny, and so I feel like that kind of breaks up that height a bit. But the second thing here that I want to talk about is that is one of the very first things that happened in the space. If you think back to when I made that modern wood range hood video, that was over a full year before my kitchen was completed. And so that was one of the first things to go in as cabinets were going in, as countertops were going in. And one thing that I hear a lot from people in my life personally or in the comments section is, wow, Andrew, you have such a vision. Like you see everything together and how do you know how it's all going to turn out? And the reality is that I go into a project with as much planning as possible, and I try to have a vision of how everything's gonna look, and I do some mood boarding, and I do some like renderings, and I acquire materials. I do my best, but ultimately you have to see things in the space and you can't really know until you see everything together. However, if I can lend one more thing to like the trend conversation, there is a thing of when you're living in your space for a while and you start to become really accustomed to your surroundings, then you start to like rethink things or feel like things should change. You just feel like a sort of fatigue with this space. And it's funny, you know, I was traveling a little bit ago and I came back to my kitchen and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. This looks amazing. It's hard when you're surrounded by the same environment all the time to continue to appreciate and continue to feel validated in those choices. And so people just redecorate all the time. So if you're feeling unsure about your space, I advise you to just step away, let it rest, and then come back to it with fresh eyes and really experience what you've put together with fresh eyes without that sense of fatigue. Moving on to the front porch, love the way that space looks. That's been another game changer. It's nice to drive up to my house and be like, wow, that looks pretty. Even though it looks a little bit crazy from a distance because the top is still like multicolored and crazy, and then the porch all feels like it's unified and modern and sleek. A couple things here that caught me by surprise. With the floor color, I often will do a color match of like a Magnolia home paint. I talk about that in some of my videos. I really love Joanna Gaines' taste in color. I feel like she's really good at doing those kind of in-between colors that don't have that like really high saturation. However, I'm not always willing to spend the like $60 a gallon on the like Magnolia brand paint. So I often take those swatches over to Lowe's and get them color matched. Always seems to work out pretty well. However, I will say with this floor color on the porch, it seems lighter than the swatch to me. It seems lighter than I was expecting it to be, and I wonder if that's given me enough contrast for that space. Ultimately, I like it and I think it's gonna be fine, but that was something that kind of caught me by surprise, and in that video I started to panic a little bit where I'm like, ooh, as it's all coming together, this just feels really light and everything feels really blown out. Once we brought furniture into that space, it all came together and it was fine, but colors are like that, man. It's just hard to know how everything's gonna fit together until you see it together. I really try in my spaces to make everything actually functional and to limit the amount of movie magic that I'm using to produce a certain like after. However, on my porch, there definitely was some movie magic there in the way that cords have been run. I have just the one plug on the side over by the bench, and so there's that little lamp that's on the console table that's lit up in the after of that video, and yeah, that's definitely an extension cord that's run right across the front door. Same with my only lights for my Christmas videos. There's an extension cord run right across the center of there. It's not pretty, it's not practical, but it just had to be done to get the video looking the way I wanted it to look. I keep it real with y'all most of the time, I promise, but sometimes there's a little bit of editing and a little bit of movie magic. Moving on to my art videos. I've been doing a lot of art here on my channel this year. Some of y'all are really into that. I appreciate that. It's funny with that, when we're talking about things that when they sit in your space for longer, do you get used to them or do you continue to see all the problems? And it's tough for me to hang my own artwork in my house because I look back on it later and I'm like, wow, I wish I'd done this differently. And it's hard not to see it that way. Again, some things like the little tarot card things that are in my bathroom, I can look at them and I really like them right off the bat. I continue to like them. I'm happy to have them in my house. With the portrait that's on the front porch, that was from the Transforming Thrifted art video that got a ton of views. I like that piece. I like how it looks in that space. I'm aware that there's a little bit of fatigue of having the same thing in your space and you're gonna notice the problems with it. However, I would have done things differently. I think I would have layered a little bit more than I did. I think that I would have used more burnt sienna in washing it rather than yellow. It tends to look a little bit yellow and sickly for me right now. It has kind of like a bold, like almost glowing green kind of feel. And I would have liked for it to feel a little bit warmer. Yeah, it's tough with art. It's actually really nice. You know, I've sold a lot of art to you all this year, and it's really wonderful to create something and to put it out there and to have someone else love it and then have it go away to them. Because if it sits around with me in my house, then I look back on it later and I'm like, wow, I wish I'd done something differently. But it's validating and freeing that someone else appreciates the work that I'm doing and wants that to be a part of their lives. And I just really appreciate everyone that's made purchases this year. I do still have a couple of pieces from the Trash into Art video that are hanging around in my office space, and I actually really like them. Like right now, I still feel like I stand behind those and that those are great, so maybe they'll continue to stay in my space, we'll see. All right, we've talked about lots of good. Let's talk about my worst videos of the year. So I have a couple different ones for a couple different reasons. First off, we have the pantry door video. I struggle sometimes with my channel because I know there are projects that are happening in my renovation that I just need to do and that will take a bit of time. But they're not like the most exciting video ever. And so I always try to think about how to frame it into something that feels like it will be exciting and entertaining, but that's not always possible and it doesn't always work out. So with the pantry door video, essentially we just cut a hole in the wall behind me in my pantry and that was the video. And I think it has like my lowest views of the entire year. If you're watching this, go show that video some love. However, that is probably one of the most important projects that happened this year because it's totally changed the way that I use my house. I now have a passageway from my kitchen into my living room, and that is a game changer. It's just created a really nice flow. So absolutely stand behind that. It's a great project, just maybe not the best video. Another big bomb this year was my dog Halloween costumes video. A lot of y'all love seeing Queenie in my videos, and I thought it'd be fun to showcase her more and to make some stuff for her. I think there's just maybe not that big of a market of people that want to make couture outfits for their dog. So the level of craftsmanship and stress that went into that video was just like hardly worth it. She didn't get to wear the costumes anywhere out in public. We didn't go and do a party or anything. I know there are a few of you out there that really love that video, and so that one's for you. I'm so glad you appreciated it, but I am asking myself, like, why did I bother? And then finally, if we can name the worst video of the year, it's the carpet tile rug video, for a couple of reasons. If you watched that video, you saw how stressed I was about that process. And I mentioned at the end, you know, I was focusing on cutting every single piece apart. I could have just put all the tiles together and then just painted the pattern and it would have looked basically the same. So there was so much time and anguish that went into that for no reason. And then at the end of the day, I don't really love the finished product that much. I do really like the way that the rug looks by itself. Like when I had it in my atrium and there was no table, no chairs or anything on top of it, I'm like, this is looking good, I like that. But then once more furniture layered in on top of it, it just felt weird. And so it's not that I'm unhappy with how the finished product looks as a whole, it just is really hard to style. And this is something that's hard for me as well within a DIY space. One of the things that I really like about thrifting an item is that it is what it is, and you bring it into your space and you can see it for the first time as it actually is in the space. And it may not match perfectly and it may not fit the vibe exactly, but there's something about that that kind of pushes you in a new direction that feels less obvious. And so I find it hard when creating art for a specific person or for a specific space or creating a project for a specific room. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the right level of like juxtaposition and contrast of, is this too matchy or how do I make it feel like it fits with the vibe of the room without feeling like it was like, I don't know, it makes me think of like an HGTV magazine where it's like bookcases that are filled with all these accessories that match the color scheme of the room perfectly, and it just feels kind of like flat or formulaic or something. And so I feel that way when you're DIYing a project for your space. You're like, okay, I want to use this general color palette, but how on the nose is that going to be? And is it going to look like it's matching too hard? That's a really hard thing to gauge. And so when I was creating that rug specifically for that space, I think ultimately the vision that I had in my head and how it all ended up working together just didn't really work. Again, I had a thought about how it would look, but seeing it actually in the space with everything put together is very different. Also, from the time I started that project to the time I finished it, the function and the style of that room kind of changed. And so I was holding on to this older idea about what the room was going to be and then trying to make it fit into the new idea. So ultimately that video was just not a success for me personally. It did have a lot of views. Some people felt really inspired by it. And ultimately that's what I want to do here on the channel, is to give you ideas and allow you to take them in your own direction. So by all means, take it in a different direction. There's some good information there, but yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't do it again. Alright, if you've been watching my channel a lot this year, you're going to appreciate these two random thoughts. First of all, you know that I have a habit of ending up at IKEA or ending up at a furniture store and buying something really massive and then trying to get it home in my dad's matrix with the hatchback open and everything tied up. We bought the IKEA PAX cabinets that way. We've gotten some stuff in the As-is section that way. Unfortunately, my dad was in a car accident a few weeks ago. He is totally fine. However, the matrix was totaled. So let's all take a moment to commemorate the matrix, what it did for us here on the channel, the entertainment value that it provided us with its back open, the beautiful things that it transported to my house. Rest in peace, Matrix. And another weird life update here, the wood mid-century fruit that I thrifted in my massive thrift haul video. That was very controversial in the comments section. I finally got a little brass bowl for it to go in. It's not perfect, I haven't found a place for it in my house yet, but I thought I would update you and let you know that the wood fruit does now have a home, and it is a permanent part of my collection now. Moving on to my ongoing renovations. These are spaces that are kind of continuing to be in process and we'll continue working on them in 2024. With the bedroom makeover, I think that's probably my favorite video of the year. That was the video that Brooklyn had sponsored. That was my first sponsored video. I love that space. I love that project. I'm so grateful for the response that video received. I'm so excited to have a space like that in my life that feels so calm and so put together that I can feel really restful in. A couple thoughts about that space. First of all, as I mentioned, when you're in a space for a while, you can get some sort of fatigue about certain elements of it, or you're like, you just want something fresh. So in that space, I've mixed and matched a bit of the bedding. I've changed up some of the accessories in that space. I've done that in my kitchen. I've done that in every room of my house. Everything's just constantly moving around a little bit. And I think that just keeps things feeling really fresh and really alive. My only issue with that space, the nightstand that's in there that was a part of my thrifted furniture makeover video, As soon as that video went live, I started getting comments from people that are like, why did you put the legs so close together? If you'd spaced them out a little bit, the piece would look better. And again, the only time a comment can hurt me is when you're right. And I was like, damn, why did I not think of that? I tried to push them all the way out to the edges, and that looked really weird and kind of like bow-legged. But I think I just ended up pushing them in too far, and it would be a simple change to move, except for the whole bottom of that was constructed for the legs to be like that, and they can't move out easily. I love the white piece in my atrium, although it's totally empty because I don't know what to use it for in that space. But I was so bummed right when that video went live because I started seeing those comments, and I was like, why didn't I think of that? Wow, you're really right, I got that one wrong. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot in the last couple of weeks personally, and that's a big sort of theme for the year, is being okay with making mistakes. I often feel some level of anxiety because I feel like if I could have foreseen that this was gonna happen, or if I had planned carefully enough, or if I had thought things through enough, this mistake wouldn't have happened, and therefore I wouldn't have to take the time to go back and fix it later. And the tough thing about that is that it's true. Like, if we do think things through fully and think about all the things and have a full plan in place, and if everything goes according to plan, then yes, it's possible to not make mistakes. And so it feels like it's achievable and attainable, but the reality is that that's just not the way that life works. That's not the way that DIY works. That's not the way that renovation works. And so I'm trying to let go of that fear of making mistakes and just do the best I can, plan as much as I can, and then sometimes it works out perfectly and sometimes it doesn't. That's okay. One of the most unexpected projects of the year for me was the Origami Lamp. I mentioned in the bedroom video that I was going to do some sort of built-in lighting in there, and that didn't end up working out. I opted to go for this little origami lamp instead. And it's interesting here on my channel, you know, sometimes I go through periods where I'm working really hard to upload every week so that I can please the algorithm and so that I can give you all watching something that's more regular. I know with some YouTubers that I watch, it's really comforting to me when they upload on a regular basis, and so that I can like check in with them and like have that consistency. So I've been striving for that at periods during the year. Sometimes that doesn't always work out, but at this time I was really trying to get a video out that week, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And so with the origami lamp video, that was just like a total throwaway. Like, I'm like, well, I'll just like make a lamp and see what happens. And yes, it was still a lot of work and still a lot of stress, but I was like, nothing is gonna come of this. No one's gonna like this. No one's gonna care. And that ended up being a really successful video for me. So it's an interesting thing. Something that's nice about regularly uploading every week is that it sort of takes the pressure off in terms of like having every video be this like brilliant idea and having everything be a massive transformation. And it's like, this is what I came up with this week. Take it or leave it, and I'm always surprised by which videos perform really well and which videos flop. And so if I can reflect on my big lesson for the year in my projects, in my channel, in my life, the thing that I'm continuing to learn here and that I'm finding is that as things come together, the plan changes. I think sometimes I get anxious and frustrated because I wish that things were more simple. Like, if you're making a project, you should just be able to create a list of all the things to do and then go down the list and do it and be able to tackle it that way. And sometimes it works out that way. But I find very often with my projects and with the ways that I'm trying to innovate that I get 2 things down on the list and then suddenly a new idea comes in, or there's a problem that I didn't foresee and I have to totally pivot. Again, the perfectionist in me wants it to not be that way and wants it to be more regular and wants it to follow a schedule. But sometimes that doesn't happen. So my advice to you as you're moving forward with your artistic journey, your DIY journey, wherever you are in your space, be open to change. Check in and see things as they are. Not the way that they are in your mind's eye, but the way that they actually are in real life, and change them accordingly. And then finally, to trust your intuition. That's been a big one for me this year. I think that as feedback starts to come into play in the comment sections or in people in my life, you know, everyone has opinions. And sometimes it's really important to be open to those opinions because they're right. But sometimes, you know, being an artist is about trusting your intuition. And sometimes you just gotta go with your gut and like follow through, and it works out okay. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my channel this year. We've grown from around 3,000 subscribers at the start of the year to almost 20,000. It's been a huge jump for me. I've learned so much, and I'm just so grateful to you all for continuing to follow me on my journey here. I cannot wait for you to see all the things that I have in store for you in 2024. Be sure that you're subscribed, like this video if you like this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.